I got back a day earlier than planned. The last meeting in Dallas wrapped up ahead of schedule. Something about the client's kid getting sick. So I changed my flight and landed just after 9 p.m. I didn't text Mia. I figured I'd surprise her. We hadn't had many real moments together lately, and maybe I was chasing the idea that showing up early, unannounced, might spark something. Like it used to. When I pulled into the driveway, her car was already there. The black Subaru she loved. Parked exactly how she always left it, tucked neatly against the left side of the garage door. The porch light was off, though, and the house was dark. The only sound was the low ticking of the wind chimes, swaying gently in the breeze. Struck me as odd. Mia always left the hallway light on when she was home alone at night, even if she was already in bed. Just a habit. I sat in the car for a minute before getting out. I don't know why. Maybe I was rehearsing something. A smile. A line like, "Surprise! Canceled a flight just for you." But the silence made it hard to imagine any version of that moment playing out well. I remembered my phone was almost dead, and I didn't have my charger. I usually kept one in the suitcase, but I must have left it in the hotel. Mia kept one in her glove box. I'd borrowed it a dozen times over the years. I figured I'd grab it before going inside. I approached her car slowly, feeling like a stranger in my own driveway. When I opened the passenger door, the dome light clicked on, flooding the inside with soft yellow. I opened the glove box and reached in without looking, fingers brushing past receipts and napkins. And then I felt lace. I pulled it out. Black, soft, detailed, delicate lace with tiny flower patterns. The kind you'd expect to see on the cover of a vintage fashion magazine. I held it in my hand and just stared. It was a glove, but not hers. Mia didn't wear things like this. She hated lace, said it was impractical and itchy. I remembered her telling me once, at some wedding years ago, that if fashion required discomfort, it wasn't worth it. Form follows function, she'd said, holding up a pair of plain nude heels in a store, ignoring the red strappy ones I'd pointed out. This glove wasn't hers. I knew it like I knew her laugh. She wore cotton, leather when it was cold, sometimes wool. But this wasn't part of her world. It wasn't even hidden, not stuffed or lost or wedged behind anything. It was sitting there, folded, almost like it had been placed. Something about that detail made my heart stutter. If it had been jammed into the glove box, forgotten and wrinkled, maybe I'd have told myself it was nothing. But this felt deliberate. I walked into the house without saying anything. I slipped off my shoes, as always, and placed the glove right on the kitchen table center spot. Like evidence. Like something that needed to be acknowledged. The house was still quiet. No sounds from upstairs. No water running, no TV. Just silence. I poured myself a glass of water and sat down, staring at the glove. My brain started cycling through possibilities. Innocent, rational, increasingly absurd. Maybe she picked it up for a Halloween costume. Maybe it belonged to someone at work and she was returning it. Maybe she thrifted it. But even as I considered each scenario, my gut rejected them. When the front door opened, I didn't even flinch. Her keys jingled as they dropped into the ceramic bowl by the door. The one we'd bought on our honeymoon in Santa Fe. The sound that used to mean home now echoed like a warning bell. She walked in, brushing wind-blown hair from her face. She was wearing a navy blue coat I hadn't seen before. New maybe, or maybe I just stopped noticing things. She looked up and saw me, blinked, then smiled, that soft, automatic kind she used at work parties. "Hey," she said, voice just a touch too upbeat. "You're back early." "Yeah," I replied, nodding. Flight changed. She stepped out of her boots and into the kitchen. Her eyes flicked to the table, to the glove, then back to me. Her posture changed, subtle but real. A small stiffness in her shoulders. I saw it before she spoke. "Oh, that," she said, gesturing to it. "It's not mine. I gave a ride to a coworker last week. She was wearing those dramatic things. It must have slipped out when she got out." She said it all without pause. No stammering. No confusion. Like she'd been expecting the question. I didn't respond. Just watched her. She looked away first. "Her name's Lacey," Ironically, she added, smiling lightly at her own joke. New girl on Jennings' team. Kind of eccentric. Vintage everything. Could have asked more. Pressed. Demanded details. But I didn't. Something in me went still. Okay, I said, voice even. She looked relieved. Too relieved. She started unpacking groceries I hadn't noticed she brought in. Bread, a bottle of wine, 2 limes. I watched her move around the kitchen like nothing had happened. Like there wasn't something foreign and fragile sitting in the middle of our lives. Did you eat on the plane? She asked. Yeah. Airport food. Not great. You want tea or anything? I shook my head. She moved on. We talked about nothing for the next hour. How work was. How Dallas traffic kid. She told me a story about a coworker spilling coffee on a keyboard. I nodded in the right places. But I couldn't unsee the way she hadn't hesitated. The way her explanation had sounded less like a reaction and more like a line rehearsed too many times in front of a mirror. Later, after she went to bed, I sat in the living room with the lights off. I kept thinking about the glove. About how clean the explanation was. How her voice hadn't wavered. I kept remembering how she used to light up when I came home early. How she used to ask about my flights, tell me she missed me. That didn't happen tonight. It wasn't just the glove. It was the way she didn't ask why I came home early. The way she didn't even touch me. We'd been married 8 years. Long enough to know when something was off. And something was definitely off. I didn't know what yet. But that glove, that single black lace glove, pulled something loose. Something I hadn't let myself look at before. I sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the hum of the fridge, the occasional groan of the heating ducts. And for the first time in years, I felt like I didn't recognize the life I was sitting in. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the glove. It sat in the back of my mind like an alarm that never really shuts off. And the more I tried to move on from it, the more I began to notice things, small things at first. Barely their inconsistencies that would have meant nothing to me a month ago. But once the seed of suspicion is planted, everything starts to look like a clue. I started going over the last few weeks in my head. Not intentionally, just passively, like my brain was trying to complete a puzzle I didn't know I'd been building. Mia had been different. I didn't want to admit it at the time, but I felt something shifting before Dallas. Before the glove. She'd been staying late at work more often. At first, it made sense. She was up for a promotion and I supported her grinding through it. I told her I was proud of her. But now, thinking back, she hadn't been excited. She had seemed relieved. Like the promotion wasn't a victory, it was an escape. Then there were the passwords. We used to know each other's passwords, not in a weird, controlling way. Just the normal couple stuff. Booking vacations, ordering groceries from each other's accounts, using the same Netflix login since 2014. But a few weeks ago, I tried to open her laptop to look up a receipt she'd downloaded for taxes. The password had changed. She said something vague about company policy that they were cracking down on security for anyone working remote. I believed her. Now I wasn't so sure. Her phone had been different too. She used to leave it face up on the table, charging next to mine, scrolling while we watched TV. Lately, it was always face down. Always on vibrate. She started bringing it into the bathroom again, even for a quick shower, which was something she hadn't done in years. I told myself it was paranoia. But it didn't feel like paranoia anymore. It felt like pattern recognition. And then there was that night 2 weeks before Dallas when I walked by the bathroom and heard her whispering. Not loud. Not laughing. Just the soft, in asterisk mate tone you don't use with your brother. I stepped in without knocking. She was sitting on the closed toilet lid, phone in hand. She looked up quickly and said, "Hang on, I'll call you back," and ended the call before I could ask who it was. When I asked, she said it was her brother, Matt. But Matt's voice didn't sound like that. I've known him for years. This voice had been deeper. Smoother. And there was a shift in her body when I walked in, a kind of microflinch I hadn't seen before. Still, I said nothing. I wanted to trust her. But trust needs fuel. And she wasn't giving me anything. There were other moments too. I remembered how she didn't ask about my Dallas trip much. Usually, she'd want the play-by-play, how the flights went, who I met, what the client said. But this time, she barely asked anything. Just nodded, smiled, changed the subject. At first, I told myself she was tired. Now I wasn't sure she cared. We used to connect every night before bed. It didn't matter how busy we were, we'd lie there in the dark and just talk. About work, family, random dreams we had. Lately, she either fell asleep early or pretended to. If I brought something up, she'd mumble or say, "Let's talk in the morning," but the morning never came. That's when I realized she wasn't just avoiding conversation. She was avoiding connection. And the more I paid attention, the more it showed. She touched me less. Not in an obvious way, she still kissed me goodbye when I left for work, still sat beside me on the couch. But it was all mechanical. A routine, not a choice. She stopped reaching for my hand when we walked into restaurants. She stopped resting her head on my shoulder when we watched movies. Those moments were small, but they added up. The absence of them felt heavier than the presence ever did. I started picking up her laundry from the bathroom floor, something I hadn't done in months. Not out of resentment, just habit. And one day I noticed it. A scent. Cologne. Not mine. It was subtle, buried under her perfume, but it was there. A different note, sharp, clean, expensive. Something woodsy, maybe cedar or bergamot. I didn't wear anything like that. I hadn't changed brands since college. I asked her if she'd started wearing a new lotion. She shrugged and said maybe someone brushed against her on the train. It was possible. But that scent clung. It wasn't a passing trace. It was embedded. I used to dismiss those things. I wanted to believe in her. Believe in us. But after the glove, I couldn't ignore what I'd already begged *N to see. Even the night we celebrated her promotion, it hit different now. I remember her being happy. Too happy, almost giddy. We had dinner at a new place downtown. She ordered a glass of wine she normally didn't like, wore heels even though we had to walk from the parking lot. But the whole night, she barely touched me. She smiled, laughed, toasted, but there was no spark in her eyes when she looked at me. Her energy was aimed somewhere else. Or maybe someone else. I told myself it was stress, that she was overwhelmed. But I see it now. That wasn't stress. That was relief. Not the kind you feel when you've earned something, but the kind you feel when the risk has paid off. When the secret is still safe. Her promotion had come from Richard Evans, her boss. I'd met him once. Polished guy. Early 40s. Charismatic in a way that felt rehearsed. He shook my hand and made direct eye contact, but I remembered thinking, he's not looking at me. He's checking a box. Mia never talked about him much. Said he was demanding but fair. Used to complain about how he nitpicked her work, then suddenly he was her biggest supporter. She's got leadership potential, he said at some party. Real star material. At the time, I'd been proud. Now I wasn't so sure what he meant. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's all coincidence. A shift in behavior. A few suspicious moments. But when you stack it all up, late nights, password changes, phone habits, body language, a mysterious glove, it stops looking like coincidence and starts looking like camouflage. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was just confused. Disoriented. Because if I wasn't seeing the truth, then I didn't know her. And if I was seeing it, then I didn't know her either. That realization hurt more than anything. I thought about asking her. Sitting her down and being direct. But something in me said wait. I needed to be sure. If I accused her now and she flipped it around, I'd look paranoid. I'd give her room to gaslight me. I needed something real. Not just a feeling. Because if I was wrong, I'd destroy us. But if I was right, then us didn't exist anymore. It started with a restless morning. Mia was still asleep, curled up on her side like always, her breathing steady. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my thoughts circling like vultures. Something had shifted between us, and no matter how hard I tried to rationalize it, the distance only widened. I got out of bed quietly, careful not to wake her. She'd been working late the past 3 nights. Or so she said. I didn't believe her anymore, not completely. I didn't want to believe I was the kind of man who checked his wife's things, but I was becoming him. Not because I wanted to, but because the weight of not knowing was starting to crush me. I went downstairs and made coffee I didn't really want. As a brood, I sat at the kitchen table, my eyes locked on the closed laptop she had left there. Silver MacBook. No stickers. Clean, just like her. Always neat, organized. And lately? Guarded. She used to leave it open. We shared playlists, grocery lists, even Pinterest boards when we were planning a backyard reno that never happened. But now it was always shut, always locked. She said it was a work requirement. I stared at it for a long time before I reached out. I told myself I wouldn't open anything. Just check the login. But my fingers moved like they had muscle memory. I typed her old password. Nothing. Tried a variation. Still nothing. But Mia wasn't creative with passwords, just consistent. Same structure, different numbers. And after 3 tries, there it was. I was in. Her desktop was empty. Too empty. She used to have a cluttered home screen, PDFs, open spreadsheets, a browser window, or 2. This time it was spotless. The browser history was just as clean. Wiped. Recently closed tabs? None. Downloads? Cleared. She hadn't just shut her laptop. She had scrubbed it. My stomach twisted. I downloaded a recovery tool I remembered from college. It was slow, clunky, but still worked. I set it to scan deleted cache files and browser history. It took a while, long enough for me to second-guess myself a dozen times. But when it finished, the results were there. Clear. Inarguable. There were search entries for how to hide text messages, VPN for Mac, and private album apps. The dates went back weeks. Not months. Not years. Just weeks. Right around when things started changing. There was a folder named archive_22 hidden in a deeply nested temp directory. I clicked it open, heart pounding like a drum in my throat. Inside were !TS. Dozens of them. Messages. Photos. Email threads. The name that came up most? Richard Evans. Her boss. There were texts from a few weeks ago. They weren't graphic, but they didn't need to be. One started with, "Richard, dinner again tonight? Same place? Mia, can't wait. Hope the table's in the back again, winking face." Another had a blurry image of what looked like the inside of an apartment, open kitchen, wine glasses on a counter, soft lamplight. It wasn't our apartment. I knew every corner of our place. This was somewhere else. Too clean, too staged. His place, maybe? And then there was a message that stopped me cold. "Richard, your talent isn't the only thing I appreciate." Mia, red heart. No words. Just the emoji. But that was enough. There were photos of her smiling. Not selfies like she sent me, these were different. She looked relaxed. Present. Fully engaged in whoever was behind the lens. And in one *T, I saw his hand. Barely in the frame, but unmistakable. Resting on her thigh. I scrolled further, not even sure why. I wasn't looking for confirmation anymore, I already had it. I think I was just hoping for a reason. Something that would make this easier to understand. But all I found were more conversations, little digital footprints that made it clear this wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. This was a relationship, built in the cracks of my marriage. I sat back from the laptop and stared at nothing. My coffee had gone cold, untouched. The kitchen was quiet except for the low hum of the fridge. And in that stillness, everything in me collapsed. It wasn't anger that hit first. It was grief. I thought about every dinner we'd had where I tried to get her to open up, every night I held her when she said she was exhausted, every morning she kissed my cheek while her mind was already elsewhere. I thought about the way I defended her when friends said she'd become distant. "She's just tired," I'd said. "Work's a lot right now." No, work wasn't a lot. Work was the cover story. And I was the fool who bought it. I didn't know how long I sat there. Maybe an hour. Maybe more. When I finally moved, I didn't feel like myself. I felt like a stranger in my own skin. I closed the laptop gently, like it might explode if I touched it too hard. I thought about going upstairs. About waking her. About standing over the bed and asking, why him? But what would she say? What could she say that wouldn't make it worse? I already had the truth. And the truth didn't need clarification. So instead, I wrote a note. Nothing dramatic. Just one line. "I saw everything. Don't follow me." I left it on the coffee table. Then I packed a bag. A few shirts. Toiletries. My laptop. My passport, just in case. I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. Not in that house. Not in that silence. Not in that version of my life that had turned into a lie. I grabbed my keys. Walked to the car. The morning was gray, overcast. The kind of sky that made everything look faded. I turned the ignition, pulled out of the driveway, and didn't look back. Not once. As I drove, the weight in my chest didn't lift. It sank deeper. Because I realized something I hadn't let myself think until then. She didn't just cheat on me. She chose someone else. Over and over again. She chose him. And now I had to choose myself. I didn't wake her. Didn't leave the bedroom light on. Didn't slam a door or make noise with the suitcase. I just moved in silence like a ghost drifting out of a house I once called mine. If she woke up and found the note, fine. If not, she'd figure it out eventually. The street was still asleep when I pulled away. Early morning fog clung to the sidewalk like it was trying to smother the neighborhood. No birds. No dogs. Just the hum of my engine and the occasional flash of a streetlight cutting through mist. The first few miles passed without thought. No radio. No destination. Just motion. I drove like I was trying to outrun something, but I didn't know what. Her? The truth? Myself? I pulled into a gas station somewhere off I-84, hands gripping the wheel tighter than I meant to. My shoulders ached. I hadn't realized I'd been tensing them since the moment I closed the laptop. The pump clicked, and I didn't move. I just sat there, staring at the numbers rolling upward, hypnotized by the mindless precision of something that made sense. Unlike everything else. I paid inside. The clerk barely looked at me. I bought a bottle of water and a protein bar I didn't want. Back in the car, I took one bite and threw the rest on the passenger seat. My stomach felt like it had folded in on itself. I wasn't hungry. I was hollow. I checked my phone. One missed call. Mia. No voicemail. I didn't call back. Instead, I kept driving, winding through empty backroads and small towns I couldn't name. The sun started to rise behind me, casting long shadows over the hills. I didn't feel like a betrayed husband. I didn't even feel angry, really. What I felt was something quieter, emptier, like I just walked out of a movie I didn't realize was a tragedy until the credits rolled. One thought kept repeating itself like static in my brain. You weren't chosen. That was the truth. Wasn't it? I wasn't the one she thought about late at night. I wasn't the one she got excited to see or text or flirt with. I was the safe one, the dependable one, the scenery, reliable, unremarkable, the guy who picked up groceries, fixed the leaky faucet, folded the laundry when she forgot. She didn't leave me in the physical sense. But emotionally, she'd been gone for a while, and I had been trying to hold on to a version of us that didn't exist anymore. Maybe hadn't existed in years. I thought if I worked hard, if I stayed steady, she'd see me, really see me. But I think I just faded into the wallpaper. We still had dinner together, still watched shows, still shared space. But none of that meant she was with me. She was around me. It wasn't the same. Somewhere along the line I became convenient. And no one wants to be convenient in love. I didn't call anyone. I didn't want advice or sympathy. I didn't want someone telling me to work it out or hear her side. What side? I'd seen her side literally in text messages and half-lit apartment photos. Her side was clear. She didn't want me. She just didn't want to be alone. There's a difference. I thought about going to a hotel, but something in me rebelled against the idea. Too sterile. Too transactional. So I kept driving until I found a small roadside motel on the edge of a state park. Nothing fancy. A faded sign, maybe 6 rooms total. The kind of place people pass without noticing. I checked in with a guy named Lou who didn't ask questions. He handed me a key on a plastic tag and pointed down a narrow gravel lot. Room 4. I stepped inside and was hit with the smell of bleach and stale air conditioning. It was perfect. I set my bag down and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress creaked like it hadn't been used in a while. I looked around. One lamp, no art on the walls, a small TV with dust on the screen. No distractions, no reminders. I lay back, stared at the ceiling, and felt the weight of stillness press against my chest. I waited for tears or rage or some kind of emotional release, but nothing came, just exhaustion. Not the kind that sleep fixes, but the kind that lives in your bones. I don't know how long I lay there. An hour? 2? Time felt loose. I thought about all the times Mia had said she was tired. All the times I'd offered her tea, rubbed her shoulders, told her to rest. And now I understood. She wasn't tired. She was done. With me. With us. And I had been too blind or too hopeful to see it. The phone buzzed again. Her name on the screen. No message. Just the name, glowing like a wound that refused to close. I silenced it, stared at the ceiling some more. Then I finally slept. It wasn't restful. I didn't dream. It was more like unconsciousness. Falling through the floor of my mind into a black space where nothing touched me. And for the first time in years, I didn't worry where she was, or who she was texting, or whether I was being enough. I wasn't her husband in that room. I was just a man alone. And for now, that was better than being someone who had to fight to be seen. I woke up in the late afternoon. My back ached. My phone showed 5 missed calls. Mia again. I deleted the log. Not out of spite. Just necessity. I didn't want to hear her voice. Not now. Maybe not ever. I sat outside the motel on a rickety bench, watching cars pass on the highway. There weren't many. A red pickup. A couple on a motorcycle. A delivery van. None of them knew me. None of them knew what had just unraveled inside a little suburban house not far from here. To them, I was just another guy with bed hair and a bad coffee craving. It was freeing in a strange way, being unknown, being unnecessary. There's this belief we carry into adulthood that if we do all the right things, show up, stay loyal, build a life, we'll be loved the same way back. That if we protect someone, they'll protect us too. But that's not how it works. Love isn't owed. It's not guaranteed. And sometimes, no matter how much you give, people still walk away. Or worse, they stay and vanish right in front of you. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know if I was going back or when. I just knew that I couldn't stay frozen in that house another day, pretending the furniture hadn't rearranged itself while I wasn't looking. I had to move, even if I wasn't sure where yet. The next morning, I found myself at a gas station diner about 10 miles south of the motel. It was the kind of place stuck in time, red vinyl booths, coffee poured from glass pots, the hum of an ancient jukebox that no one dared touch. I slid into a booth by the window and sat there, hands wrapped around a ceramic mug that smelled more like dish soap than coffee. I didn't care. I wasn't there for the taste. I just needed somewhere to sit that wasn't full of memories. Outside, trucks rolled past on the highway. The sky was low and gray, the kind that made everything look colder than it really was. I watched people come and go, parents corralling sticky-faced kids, a group of bikers laughing too loud, a man in a denim jacket trying to fix his windshield wipers with a butter knife. The ordinary world kept turning. It didn't care about my broken marriage. It didn't care that the ground had just caved in under my life. And maybe that was comforting in a strange way. I hadn't turned my phone on yet. It was still sitting face down on the table beside me. I hadn't touched it since deleting Mia's calls the day before. Part of me was tempted to throw it in the trash, just walk away from the version of myself that kept checking, hoping, needing. But when I finally turned it over, the screen lit up. Missed calls. 5 more. A string of texts, all from Mia. Mia, where are you? Mia, please talk to me. Mia, I know what you saw. It's not what you think. Mia, can we talk? Please. I need to explain. Mia, I'm coming to find you. That last one stopped me. My stomach dropped even though I wasn't sure why. She didn't know where I was, at least I didn't think she did. But there was something about the certainty in her message that made me feel exposed. Like she was closing in, not to apologize, but to salvage whatever was left of the version of her she thought I still believed in. I set the phone down again, slower this time. About 20 minutes passed. I was halfway through the second cup of that awful coffee when the diner door opened and the bell jingled overhead. I didn't even look up at first. But then I felt it, some shift in the room, some pause in the background noise. A familiar presence. I looked up, and there she was. Mia. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot, like she'd done it in the car. Her eyes were red, not from crying exactly, but from stress or maybe panic. She wore a sweatshirt I didn't recognize and jeans that didn't match her usual aesthetic. She looked diminished. Like the version of herself she presented to the world had cracked, and now she was just a person. Not composed. Not curated. Just raw. She spotted me and walked over slowly, uncertainly, like she wasn't sure I'd stay seated. I didn't move. I didn't speak. She slid into the booth across from me, hands clenched together. Mia, I said, nodding once. Not warm. Not cold. Just neutral. I didn't know where else to go, she said. I tracked your phone. You still have location sharing turned on. Of course. I had forgotten. Or maybe part of me had left it on intentionally. Some small, pathetic part of me still connected to the hope she might come after me. She looked at the coffee and then at me, trying to gauge my temperature. I didn't give her much. Don't worry, she said after a pause. I'm not here to make a scene. I raised an eyebrow. What are you here to do? She sighed. To talk. To explain. Explain. I repeated. You mean lie? She flinched. No. I mean explain what happened. What's been happening? Please. I didn't answer. Just looked at her. Watched her twist the edge of a napkin into a tiny rope between her fingers. She used to do that when she was nervous. I remembered. I know you saw the messages, she said. And the pictures. I nodded. She hesitated. I didn't mean for you to find them like that. I laughed low and bitter. That's what you're upset about? That I found them? Her eyes met mine. No. That you saw them without context. There is no context that makes them okay, I said quietly. She looked down again. You're right. I didn't respond. I didn't want to make it easier for her. She inhaled shakily. It didn't start the way you think. It wasn't physical at first. I was stressed, burned out. Richard, he noticed. He started talking to me. Listening. I didn't expect anything from it. But things kept happening. Meetings ran late. We got dinner sometimes just to talk. Then it crossed a line, I said. She nodded. I stared out the window. I didn't want to hear the rest. But she kept going. I felt seen, she whispered. I know that's not an excuse. It's not. But I hadn't felt seen in so long. With you, it started to feel like I was invisible. I turned back to her. You think I wanted that? You think I stopped caring? I've been bending over backwards trying to keep this together while you were slipping away, and I thought it was my fault. That I wasn't doing enough. Tears welled in her eyes. It wasn't you. It wasn't. But you let me think it was, I said, my voice colder now. You let me carry that. While you were getting your validation somewhere else. She reached across the table, but I pulled my hands back. Her face fell. I ended it, she said. With him. A week ago. Before Dallas. I laughed again. Because you got what you wanted? The promotion? She didn't answer. And that was the answer. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. You didn't come here because you miss me. You came because I walked away. And now you don't know what that means for you. That's not true, she said, but it lacked conviction. Isn't it? She looked shattered. Like the version of herself she had tried to protect was finally collapsing under its own weight. And maybe part of me should have felt satisfaction in that. But I didn't. I just felt empty. You're right about one thing, I said. You were invisible. But not because I stopped seeing you. Because you stopped showing up. She tried to say something, but I stood before she could. I dropped a 20 on the table even though I hadn't eaten anything. You can finish the coffee, I said. And then I walked out. She followed me into the parking lot. Please, she called. Don't leave like this. Don't throw it all away. I turned. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm just refusing to keep carrying what you already abandoned. Tears were falling freely now, but I didn't move toward her. There's still time to fix this, she said. We can go to therapy. We can rebuild. Therapy? I echoed. You want therapy now? After months of secrets and gaslighting? Her face crumpled. Tell me the truth, Mia. Do you want me? Or do you want the life I gave you? She didn't answer. And that silence was louder than any confession. I nodded once, got in the car, and closed the door. This time, I didn't look back. I didn't go far. Just far enough to breathe. I pulled into a parking lot near the edge of town and sat there, hands on the wheel, engine off. The echo of our conversation still hung in my head, her voice tight with panic, my own too tired to be cruel. I didn't hate her. That was the hardest part. I wanted to. But what I felt was worse than hate. I felt nothing. She had followed me out of the diner like she still had some kind of hold on me, like the right words might rewind time. But nothing she said mattered anymore. It wasn't about love. It was about damage control. About preserving a version of her life where she didn't have to face being alone. She begged. She cried. She said couples go through rough patches. But her voice wasn't pleading for me. It was pleading for safety. For the man who paid the bills, who remembered her mom's birthday, who fixed the Wi-Fi. I was no longer a person, just a piece of her comfort system. I told her I hoped one day she'd be honest with herself. Then I walked away before she could answer. No yelling. No drama. Just the end. I drove through 3 states before I ended up at my brother Taylor's house. We hadn't spoken much lately, too busy, too much life in the way, but when he opened the door, he didn't ask questions. Just pulled me into a hug and said, "Room's yours. You want coffee or silence?" Silence, I muttered. We sat on his back porch, the evening warm and quiet. I told him what happened. Not everything, just enough. He didn't interrupt. Just listened. At some point, he handed me a beer and said, "You didn't lose her. She let you go. That's different." I nodded. Let that settle. For the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't being handled, fixed, or explained to. I was just accepted. Seen. I didn't know what came next, if I'd stay here, go back, start over. But one thing was clear, I wasn't returning to that apartment full of silence and pretending. I wasn't going to shrink just to make someone else comfortable. For the first time in a long time, I was choosing me. And that was enough for now.